I'm Albert Towell, and this is Practice in Point One, where we interview big law attorneys all about their practice in under 6 minutes or point one billable hours. Glad to be joined by Randi Lally. So, Randi, tell us your title, your practice area, and where you work.
Absolutely. My name is Randi Lally. I'm a partner in the M&A private equity group at Fried Frank in New York, where I have spent my entire legal career.
Great. So let's start off. Take us through a typical mergers and acquisitions or M&A transaction that you'd work on from beginning to end.
Sure. So when a client first calls me to work on an M&A deal, the very first thing I do is put together my team at Fried Frank. And one of the first work streams that we do is what's called legal due diligence, where we learn all about the company that our client is looking to acquire. And we learn how they operate, what their contracts are, what liabilities the company has, basically everything that if my client is looking to buy a company, everything they need to know and they're going to step into when buying the company. We also start working on and drafting the legal documentation on which our client will acquire a company. And we work together with the other lawyers in drafting and negotiating those documents. Those are being negotiated. There's a lot of work to be done figuring out how a transaction is going to be structured. And when we finish the structure and the legal due diligence and the transaction documentation is negotiated, we would sign. That's when you would sign a transaction. It is pretty typical in the M&A transactions that we do, where you first would sign a transaction and then there would later be a closing of a transaction when money is actually exchanged to buy a company.
Fantastic. So a law student considering M&A work, it's always helpful to know. So you wake up in the morning, you go to work. What is your typical day like?
So one of the things I've always loved about M&A is that every day is very different and the days are very dynamic and interactive. I think there's some types of law where you can really kind of be behind your computer doing a lot of work, but my day consists of a lot of team meetings, a lot of client calls, discussions, working with a lot of different people. And so that's one of the things I've always enjoyed about M&A is every day is kind of different. It depends on where you are in a transaction and what point of the transaction you're up to. And you get to work with a lot of different people, whether it's your team, meeting with your client, working with lawyers on the other side. So one of the things that I think keeps it very exciting.
Great. So you have quite a lot of experience. You're a partner at the firm. It's always helpful for students to know, what are the associates on your team do?
So one of the important things is the way I think about M&A deals is for my team, everybody has to be in it together. So associates might be doing specific things like helping with the legal due diligence that I mentioned earlier, starting to draft documents. They'll often work closely with their counterparts at the other law firms in doing that, or even their counterparts at the client that we're working with. So that is how particularly young associates or young lawyers on my team start working. But we do really try on our deals to keep the whole team involved. Everyone's involved in team meetings, so everybody can follow the progress of a transaction.
That's great. So my favorite question, what is the coolest deal that you worked on?
Probably a lot. I'm grateful to be able to say that. But one really cool deal I worked on was for a private equity client. They acquired assets and then turned it into like a joint venture partnership. But it was from the Football Players Association and Baseball Players Association. And it was this acquisition and joint venture transaction to commercialize like name, image, likeness of players. And it was the reason why I enjoyed it so much, it was a really bespoke, novel transaction. It required a lot of creativity, a lot of thinking outside of the box. There was not a lot of precedent to look at to see what has everybody done before. So it required a lot of creative thinking and problem solving in getting that deal together. It was a lot of fun to be a part of.
Very cool. So when students are thinking about different practice areas, always great to know why other people chose their practice areas. So I guess tell us, why did you choose to be an M&A attorney?
Sure. So one of the things that drew me to M&A, and in my first experience doing M&A work actually was when I was a summer associate here at Fried Frank, is how much M&A works with all other practice areas at the firm. So I'll work with my tax colleagues on how to structure a transaction. I'll work with my regulatory lawyers to understand how, different regulatory aspects might impact my transaction. I work with my financing colleagues and my IP colleagues, and you really get to work with all other people at the firm. And so it gives you the opportunity to, number one, become a really well-rounded attorney, because while you're mastering the expertise of M&A, you also get exposed to all of these other areas, which is really important. I like being in the role of kind of quarterbacking a transaction and, driving the M&A deal forward, but also making sure all these other pieces fit together. And I also have just enjoyed being able to work with so many different people. I think it's a nice way to spend your career, getting to know a lot of people at your firm, and having a lot of friends at the firm. And I think M&A is a really nice practice that allows you to do all of that.
Great. Very helpful insights. Thank you for joining us, Randi Lally from Free Frank.
Absolutely wonderful to spend time with you today.